President.
Senator from Vermont.
Mr. President, let us be very clear that in terms of the deficit reduction package that is being debated, we are talking about an issue of huge consequence. The media refers to the discussion as whether or not we're going to have a big deal, $4 trillion, or whether we're going to have a smaller deal of $2 trillion. But the real issue is whether or not we're going to have a fair deal. The Republican position on deficit reduction has been extremely clear. Only the elderly have to contribute to deficit reduction. Only working families, only the unemployed, only the sick. We have to balance the budget on the backs of those people. But if you are very rich and getting richer, if you're a profitable corporation, off the table, you don't have to contribute a nickel. To my mind, where the Republicans are coming from on this issue is way, way out of right field and way out of touch with where the American people believe we should go. But having said that, Mr. President, I have to tell you that I am very confused as to where President Obama is coming from on this issue. Suddenly, out of nowhere, President Obama tells us that Social Security cuts have got to be placed on the table. Where does this come from? The President understands that Social Security hasn't contributed one nickel to our deficit. In fact, Social Security has a $2.6 trillion surplus today, can pay out every benefit owed to every eligible American for the next 25 years. Social Security is funded by the payroll tax, not by the U.S. Treasury, and the President understands that. And yet the President has now put on the table significant cuts in Social Security, as well as Medicare, as well as Medicaid. Barack Obama, in recent statements, has talked about the growth of political cynicism in this country and has argued that the American people are sick and tired of politicians who refuse to tackle big issues. There is truth to what he is saying, but there is also a bigger truth, and that is that the American people are sick and tired and dismayed about candidates who run for office and say one thing, and then after they are elected, they do something very different. When candidate Barack Obama ran for office, he told the American people over and over again that he was going to fight to protect the needs of ordinary Americans and the elderly and the sick and the children. Let me quote then Senator Barack Obama and what he told the AARP on September 6, 2008, and I quote, "John McCain's campaign has suggested that the best answer for the growing pressures on Social Security might be to cut cost of living adjustments or raise the retirement age. Let me be clear, I will not do either," end of quote, Barack Obama, September 2008. So, Mr. President, when you want to ask why the American people are frustrated with politicians, are increasingly cynical, it has a lot to do with candidates who say one thing and do another thing. If you told the American people you're not going to cut Social Security, then don't cut Social Security. Keep your word. When President Obama and others are talking about cutting Social Security, one of the approaches that they are looking at is changing how we do COLAs. The Social Security Administration chief actuary estimates the effects of this change would be that beneficiaries who retire at age 65 and receive average benefits would get $560 less a year at age 75. Let me repeat that. $560 less a year at age 75. Now, that may not seem like a lot of money to some folks around here, but when you're trying to get by at the age of 75, when you got all kinds of medical bills and you got all kinds of prescription drug costs and you're trying to eat and maybe you're getting $14,000 a year in Social Security, you know what? $560 a year is a lot of money. On my website, which is sanders.senate.gov, I put a small letter that said to the president, Mr. President, stand tall. Take on these right-wing ideologues who want to make devastating cuts to working families. And just in a couple of weeks, we have 135,000 signatures on that letter. And I think that letter reflects what the American people want. They want shared sacrifice. They do not want to see the elderly, the kids, or working families being battered more and more, especially in the midst of this recession. So, Mr. President, I would say to President Obama, do not assume that just because you work and reach an agreement, that everybody here is going to support that agreement. The people demand fairness, they demand shared sacrifice, and some of us intend to bring that about.